Should be live now. This chat is ridiculously long now. What's the description?
The image feature detection Flask application offers a web-based interface for performing advanced feature detection on a preset collection of images. It integrates the robust computer vision capabilities of OpenCV to apply different feature detection algorithms, providing users with immediate visual feedback on the results of various image analysis techniques. Key functionalities: feature detection algorithms. Users can choose from a list of implemented algorithms, FAST, Harris, and Sheet-Amazi, to analyze the images. Preloaded image selection. A drop-down menu allows users to select from a range of preloaded images available on the server. Instant image processing. The server processes images using a selected algorithm and instantly displays the processed output alongside the original image. Efficient processing. Processed images are stored to avoid redundant computations, speeding up the retrieval of previously requested image analyses. Technical components: Flask backend. The application runs on Flask, a lightweight and flexible Python web server framework that facilitates rapid development. OpenCV integration. OpenCV, a comprehensive open-source library for computer vision tasks, is used for executing feature detection algorithms efficiently. Ginger 2 templating. Flask's rendering engine, Ginger 2, dynamically generates HTML content based on server-side data, such as the list of images and processing results. JavaScript enhancements. Client-side scripting enhances the user experience by dynamically updating the web interface in response to user actions. User experience. The app is tailored for simplicity and ease of use, catering to educators, students, and hobbyists interested in computer vision. By abstracting away the complexities of the algorithms, it provides an educational tool that visualizes different feature detection methods with just a few clicks. Deployment and usage. After setting up the Flask server, users can access the app through their web browser. The straightforward interface requires no special instructions, making it straightforward to compare and learn about various feature detection techniques. Future directions. While currently focused on a predetermined set of images, the app could be expanded to allow users to upload their images in the future. Additional feature detection methods and performance optimizations may also be incorporated to enhance the app's capabilities and user engagement.
Let's see, the website is in development mode, so that should be fine. Yeah, went through this overview on the HTML. It's working okay. Yeah, okay, what else do we need to do? So the problem, we had this major problem. Shall I start a new chat? And DALL-E made this image for us as well. It would have been much better if it didn't mess up all the text. Is this what the web application should look like? Well, if you're able to make it look like this, that will be greatly appreciated. Okay, let's start the new chat. I don't think. All right, now it's called. Keep making changes on the OpenAI website. Default. They still have the 50 messages every 3 hours. Let's see if we can reach that. No, I'm just kidding. Try not to reach that. Fold the structure. Let's pop in. Say this once. Okay. In the index HTML. This does not mention the my app WSGI, which is no good. Where is it? Seen it? Let's start again. Okay, I already started. This bit. Okay. Let's move on to the app. Yeah, confirm. Bring the content, don't generate anything else. JavaScript. Okay, why are you generating stuff?
I've read through the Python code you shared. It's a Flask application that serves a web interface for feature extraction from images. The code includes routes for serving the homepage, fetching image file names, fetching detector types, and processing images with different feature detection algorithms provided by the OpenCV library. It also contains functions for retrieving image files from a directory, processing images using Harris, Sheet Amazi, and fast detectors, and generating the path for processed images. I've reviewed the JavaScript code you've provided. This script is designed to run in a web browser and interacts with the Flask backend of your application. Here's a summary of its functionality. It sets up the base endpoint for your API calls conditionally, based on whether the application is running in a production environment or locally. The script fetches the list of available images and detector types from the Flask server when the page is loaded and populates the corresponding select HTML elements with these values. It adds eventlessness to these dropdowns to handle changes and update the displayed images based on the user's selections. The update image display function is responsible for updating the source of the original and processed images whenever the selection changes. The update detector type function sends an AJAX request to the server to process the selected image with the selected detector type and updates the display with the returned processed image path.
This bunch of 404s. Hey, can you fix those? I know what the problem is, but I don't want to mislead the board. I hope.
The log entries you've provided give us some information about the requests made to your Flask application and their responses. The request for script JS returned a 304 status code, which means the file was not modified since the last request, and the browser can load the cached version.
Yeah, that's fine.
Both fetch underscore detectors and fetch underscore images endpoints returned a 200 status code, indicating successful retrieval of the data. However, there was a 404 error when attempting to post to feature underscore extraction process underscore image, which means the requested resource was not found on the server.
Okay, then there is another 404.
For the post request error, you want to ensure that the endpoint feature underscore extraction process underscore image is correctly defined in your Flask routes. The Flask app should have a corresponding route handler for processing images, and it should be accessible at that URL path. For the image not being found, make sure that the image MRI brain with CONTRAST0002.jpg exists in the static images directory and that the server has proper read permissions for that directory.
Yeah, the files seem to exist. Okay.
Check the Flask route definitions to ensure they match the requested URLs. Verify that the process underscore image function exists and is correctly mapped to the route. Confirm that the static images directory contains the image file and that the Flask app static path configuration is correct.
This image. Is it trying to get process image? Yeah, this doesn't seem to work. On local server, it's not found. Make sure how to change the code so it works both in on local and production.
For your Flask application to work both locally and in production without changing the code, you should use a relative URL structure that adapts to the environment where the app is running. Since you provided a base endpoint that includes the feature_extraction prefix, you must ensure that the Flask app is configured to serve routes with this prefix. Configure a blueprint in Flask for the feature_extraction section of your application. A blueprint is a way to organize a group of related views and other code. Rather than registering views and other code directly with an application, they are registered with a blueprint.
Try that. I have a feeling it would not work, but
Modify JavaScript fetch calls. Ensure that the JavaScript fetch calls are using the correct base URL, as you started doing in the script you provided. This is a good practice as it adapts to the root prefix you've established. This means you should not have to change the JavaScript code you provided. It already adapts to the base URL as per your setup.
how does this line works? Okay, here we have to use the blueprint. Instead of uproot, we're using feature extraction. Using the same for fetch detectors. And process image. Where does this go?
Modify JavaScript fetch calls. Ensure that the JavaScript fetch calls are using the correct base URL, as you started doing in the script you provided. This is a good practice as it adapts to the root prefix you've established. This means you should not have to change the JavaScript code you provided. It already adapts to the base URL as per your setup. Correct the image source path in JavaScript. For fetching images and setting the source in the JavaScript, make sure you're using the right path that respects your static _URL_ path configuration. Based on the error log and assuming that the image exists, it seems like the path you're using in JavaScript to set the image source may be incorrect. You should use the blueprint static folder path to set the image URL dynamically.
Okay, so it did.
And make sure that your process_image function in Flask returns the URL using the URL_ function with the blueprint static endpoint. Handle static files in production. If you're using a web server like Nginx or Apache in production, ensure that it's configured to serve the feature_extraction static directory of the feature_extraction static URL path. Handle static files in production. If you're using a web server like Nginx or Apache in production, ensure that it's configured to serve the feature_extraction static directory of the feature_extraction static URL path. By using these relative paths and the blueprint setup, you allow your application to adapt to whatever host it's running on without needing to change the URL structures between environments. Yes, the modifications you've made to use a blueprint for organizing the feature extraction routes in your Flask application are correct. You've set up a blueprint named feature_extraction and adjusted the route definitions to use this blueprint. You've also registered this blueprint with the Flask application app using a URL prefix of feature_extraction. Here's a quick review to ensure everything is consistent with Flask's expected patterns. The blueprint is correctly set up with its name, import name, static folder, and static URL path. The routes for fetching images, fetching detectors, and processing the image have been moved to the blueprint and are using the feature_extraction.route decorator. The blueprint is registered with the main Flask app with a URL prefix, which means all routes defined in the blueprint will be accessible under feature underscore extraction. The URL underscore for function used in the process underscore image route correctly references the static endpoint. Since you're using a blueprint, you might need to adjust the URL underscore for usage to reflect the blueprint's static folder. The correct usage inside a blueprint would be URL underscore for feature underscore extraction, static, file name equals. One additional thing to note is that you have set a static underscore URL underscore path when initializing the Flask app and also within the blueprint. This is redundant and could potentially cause confusion or errors. Since you're serving static files from within the blueprint, you may not need to set static underscore URL underscore path on the application level unless you serve other static files outside of the blueprint. Make sure that the static underscore folder parameter in the blueprint points to the correct physical location where your static files are stored. The static underscore URL underscore path is the web accessible path, which should match the URL prefix you wish to use. Make sure that the static underscore folder parameter in the blueprint points to the correct physical location where your static files are stored. The static underscore URL underscore path is the web accessible path, which should match the URL prefix you wish to use. Remember to test your application locally and in your production environment to confirm that all static files and routes are resolving correctly and that the file paths used within your application match the actual directory structure of your project. If you run into any trouble with the paths or anything else, feel free to ask for further assistance.
Obviously, that folder is incorrect.
The log entry indicates that the URL being accessed to fetch the processed image is incorrect and returning a 404 not found error. The URL path / feature underscore has redundant segments, suggesting that there's a mix-up in the way you're constructing the URL for the processed images. Make sure that when you build the path to the processed image file, it is relative to the static directory defined in your blueprint. Since you have a blueprint named feature underscore extraction, the URL underscore for function should reference the endpoint prefixed with the blueprint name when generating URLs for static files. For example, if you're trying to generate a URL for a static file within the blueprint, it should look like this. The URL underscore for function automatically takes care of the static underscore URL underscore path you defined in your blueprint, so you don't need to include feature underscore extraction, static, images or static in the file name argument. The URL underscore for function automatically takes care of the static underscore URL underscore path you defined in your blueprint, so you don't need to include feature underscore extraction, static, images or static in the file name argument. If you're building URLs in JavaScript to update the src attribute of an img tag, ensure that you're not adding extra base paths that the URL underscore for function already handles.
Yeah, this must be it. getting the processed image.
Here, data. Processed image path should be the path returned from your Flask process underscore image route, which is already a complete URL generated by URL underscore for. Since you're using a blueprint, make sure you're not accidentally nesting the static directory inside itself when you specify the static underscore folder parameter. You can test the URL that should be generated by your Flask application manually by entering it into a browser or using a tool like curl to see if it resolves correctly. By addressing these potential issues, you should be able to resolve the 404 error and correctly serve the processed image files. If you continue to have issues, double-check your static file directory structure to ensure that the files are indeed where you expect them to be, and the server has the correct read permissions for them.
Let's make sure the blueprint is correctly used everywhere.
Your code seems well organized with the use of Flask blueprint. However, to make sure the feature underscore extraction blueprint is used correctly throughout the code, you should adhere to the following practices. Blueprint static files. Ensure all static file references within the blueprint scope routes use URL underscore for feature underscore extraction. Static filename equals, instead of URL underscore for static filename equals, to correctly point to the static files handled by the blueprint.
It seems to be wrong.
Blueprint static files. Ensure all static file references within the blueprint scope routes use URL underscore for feature underscore extraction. Static file name equals, instead of URL underscore for static file name equals, to correctly point to the static files handled by the blueprint. Template paths. When referencing static files within your HTML templates, like CSS, JavaScript, or image files, use the URL underscore for function to generate the correct paths. For instance,
Not working.
template paths. When referencing static files within your HTML templates, like CSS, JavaScript, or image files, use the URL underscore for function to generate the correct paths. For instance,
Feature extraction to be passed. There's a problem with this as well.
correct JSON response. When returning the path to the processed image in the process underscore image function, ensure that you reference the blueprint static files correctly. Proper registration. You've registered the blueprint with the Flask application using app. Register underscore blueprint, feature underscore extraction, URL underscore prefix equals, feature underscore extraction. This is correct and should be done after all the routes are defined in the blueprint.
The placement of this correct.
Ensure correct endpoints. When creating AJAX calls or form actions in your HTML templates or JavaScript files, ensure that you are pointing to the correct blueprint scoped endpoints.
Okay.
Blueprint URL prefix. Since you've registered the blueprint with a URL prefix, all the routes within the blueprint will be accessed with feature_extraction as their base URL. Make sure this prefix is included in all relevant AJAX calls or form submissions.
How to fix something not right.
To fix the JavaScript code for use with the Flask feature_extraction blueprint, you need to make sure you're referring to the correct parts and utilizing the URL_ function to generate URLs. However, since the URL_ function isn't directly usable within standalone JavaScript files, you typically pass these URLs to the template as variables within a script tag, then reference them in your external JavaScript file. Pass the URLs to your HTML template. You can inject the correct URLs into your template script tag using the URL_ function from Flask, and then use these variables in your external JavaScript file.
This is getting rather complicated. Why?
By including this in your HTML file before the external JavaScript file is loaded, you define global JavaScript variables that hold the correct URL paths as rendered by Flask.
Do this before external URL is loaded.
Use these variables in your external JS file. You can then use these variables directly in your external JavaScript file instead of constructing the endpoints with string concatenation. For example,
what? So that's supposed to be wrong. I'm not sure what the problem is because it's not giving me any proper error.
update the update image display and update detector type functions. Ensure that when updating the image src attributes, the correct path is used for both the original and processed images.
So just messing around with folders. That's line is this. Right, why this was commented out? It's not cool. I'm getting 4 of 4 again. At least now I'm getting a proper error. Generate the whole thing. I don't want to be guessing. Update image display. Detected type. Yeah, it's working again. We don't see the selected image for whatever reason.
Ensure that your Flask process underscore image endpoint is returning a JSON object with a processed image path key that contains the relative URL to the processed image file, like this.
Don't want to be guessing. Yes, it's instead of that bit at the end. It was actually working okay. It's the problem. Now it will stop working, of course. And this line is working okay. However, now I don't see the raw image. Changing file. Detect the tab is changing okay.
If the processed image is displaying correctly but the original image is not, the issue may be with how you're setting the src attribute for the original image element in the update image display function. Here's the correct JavaScript for setting the src for the original image, using the URL underscore function passed from Flask.
Not then happy to give it a go. But yeah, I feel like it won't work. Feature extraction static images. Should be the correct folder. Not sure what the problem is.
Remember that window. Location. Origin returns the base URL, which includes the protocol, HTTP or HTTPS, and the hostname, localhost or a domain name. You're then appending the static file path as defined by your Flask app static _URL _path configuration. Make sure to include the above JavaScript function within a script tag in your Flask rendered HTML template, so the selected image and detector type values are correctly passed into the function from the Flask context.
Right. Why on earth? What's going on? From GitHub Copilot.
Additionally, ensure that your Flask app static folder structure matches what you're referencing in the src attributes and that the image file exists at the specified location within the static images directory. if after checking these steps you still cannot see the original image. Verify the actual requests being made in your browser's developer tools, usually accessible with F12 or right-click greater than inspect, under the Network tab to see if the request for the original image is correct and what response the server is providing.
Here at the
Given that you're using a Flask blueprint with a URL underscore prefix of feature underscore extraction, and the static URL path is also set to feature underscore extraction static, you should construct your static file URLs carefully to avoid duplication. Ensure the blueprint static URL path is correct. The static underscore URL underscore path you set in the blueprint is used to access static files from the web, and you have set it to feature underscore extraction static. This means that the URL to access static files should not have the feature underscore extraction prefix repeated. Correct URL generation in JavaScript. When setting the SRC for the original and processed images in JavaScript, use the base URL provided by Flask without adding an extra feature underscore extraction prefix. Given the URL underscore for setup in Flask, the JavaScript code would look like this.
okay, what am I doing wrong? Messing with this folders for over an hour. Original image. Looks like it doesn't need all this stuff there.
Remove redundant prefixes. Based on the error you're seeing, it looks like your JavaScript might be making a request to an incorrect URL. Double check where you're using base endpoint or any other URL construction in JavaScript and ensure you're not appending the feature underscore extraction prefix twice.
Yeah, that's a good idea, but you
Check the Flask app configuration. If you've adjusted the app and feature underscore extraction blueprint configurations recently, make sure to restart your Flask application so that the changes take effect.
Okay. Let's start the app again.
Exactly, the redundant prefixes in your URL need to be corrected. To ensure that your JavaScript code constructs the URLs properly, you should follow these guidelines.
Yeah, that looks alright.
Setting image source. For setting the src attribute of image elements, construct the path using base endpoint followed by the static file path defined in your Flask application. For example,
Keeps giving the same thing. Right now it has that base endpoint.
setting image source. For setting the src attribute of image elements, construct the path using base endpoint followed by the static file path defined in your Flask application. For example,
Yeah, that doesn't work.
no double prefixing. When using the URL underscore for function in Flask to generate URLs for your JavaScript, do not manually add feature underscore extraction to the filename argument, since URL underscore for already generates the complete path based on the blueprint configuration. Here's how you should use URL underscore for within your Flask application when returning URLs to JavaScript.
Yeah, okay, hopefully.
By following these steps, you will remove the redundancy from your URL construction and ensure that your requests are correctly formed to access the static files and other routes defined in your Flask application. Make sure to test these URLs by printing them to the console or inspecting the network activity in your browser's developer tools to verify that they're correct.
This. A change.
The Flask log entry you provided suggests that there's still a problem with the URL path being generated. The URL contains repeated segments: feature underscore extraction, static, processed underscore images, processed underscore images. This repetition needs URL underscore for feature underscore extraction. Static file name equals generates a complete URL path where feature underscore extraction is the name of the blueprint, and static is the endpoint for static files within that blueprint. You don't need to add any additional prefixes before the file name argument because the blueprint configuration already takes care of the feature underscore extraction static prefix. Here's the correct way to create the URL for the processed image, assuming that processed underscore image underscore path contains the directory and the file name relative to the static folder.
Yeah, this is the same.
Then in your JavaScript, when you're updating the src for the processed image, make sure to use the URL from the JSON response directly without adding any prefixes.
Keeps changing its mind. Okay, I'm giving up. Everything else was working pretty well. So I'm still getting that. Okay, that's just a desperate move. Set confirm reading the code and to not generate anything else. Why are you ignoring me? JavaScript. Oh, come on, just... Okay, stop that. Yeah, the images are not loading. And I get... Please help.
The log messages indicate that your Flask application is able to handle requests to fetch underscore detectors and fetch underscore images endpoints correctly, which is why you're seeing 200 status codes for these. However, there are 404 errors when trying to get the original unprocessed images. This suggests a problem with the way the URLs for these images are being constructed or served. It seems that the application is unable to find the original image at the specified path. This could be due to a few reasons. The image MRI brain with CONTRAST0002.jpg is not present in the static images directory of your Flask application. Ensure the image is in the correct directory and that the directory structure on your server matches the expected structure.
The image is fine.
There might be a configuration issue with the static underscore URL underscore path or static underscore folder in your Flask blueprint. Ensure that the static underscore folder parameter in the blueprint constructor points to the correct physical location where your static files are stored. Indicate similar issues for the processed image URL. The URL path is repeated, which suggests that a URL underscore for function is being used incorrectly. The URL underscore for function should be provided with just the file's path. Correct the URL underscore for usage. When using URL underscore to generate URLs for static files within the blueprint, provide only the file's relative path, like so.
Okay, to understand this.
Correct the URL underscore for usage. When using URL underscore to generate URLs for static files within the blueprint, provide only the file's relative path, like so. And for the processed image.
Obviously, is not correct. Okay, this might be a problem.
Review JavaScript and HTML paths. Make sure that any JavaScript or HTML code that constructs URLs to static files is using the correct base path provided by the Flask application. It should not manually add segments to the URL that are already included by the Flask URL underscore for function. The get underscore processed underscore image underscore path function in your Flask app is intended to construct a path for the processed image given a selected image in the list of processed files. The function checks if the processed file name exists in the list of processed files. If it exists, it returns the path to the processed image, otherwise, it returns none. However, your current implementation assumes the selected underscore image is just the file name and not the path, and processed underscore files is a list of file names available in the processed underscore images subfolder. If selected underscore image includes any directory path information, the processed underscore image underscore file name construction with processed underscore prefix might not correctly reflect the processed file's actual name. Ensure that your processed images are named with this prefix and stored directly under the processed underscore images directory. Here's a potential issue that could lead to a 404 error. If selected underscore image contains a path, like images/mi-brain- with -contrast-0002.jpg, then processed underscore image underscore file name would incorrectly include the images directory in the file name. Ensure your processed image naming convention matches the expected output of this function. Also, verify that the image processing function that saves the processed file uses the same naming convention and saves the file to the correct directory. Based on your earlier error log, it seems that the request URL is duplicating the processed underscore images segment. This duplication might occur if the processed underscore image underscore path is already supposed to contain the processed underscore images prefix but is then joined with processed underscore images again when creating the URL.
Giving up. Might have to take it offline or something. Not sure what the problem is. It was working okay previously. But that's what you are here for. It's all the issues. GPT-4 doesn't seem to be able to fix it all. I think it's losing context for the whole thing. It's just giving me snippets of stuff that's incomplete. Anyway, let me know if this app be over here. Well, it's already there, but it's not working anymore. It's not showing any of the images. So hopefully we can sort it out today. Can we sort it out today? Might need to take a break. Let me know if you tried any of the other applications and have any feedback. Would be great to hear. And I'll see you next time. Bye.